This is part 2 of my RSD Sergeant V5 review. Today we're reviewing it with 29x3.0, 29 plus wheels and tires. It's interesting, I think the bike actually looks a little more proportional with 29 plus on there. This is part 2 of my 3-part review series of the RSD Sergeant V5. Part 1 was 27.5 plus, how it comes for most people. But today I've thrown on my 29x3.0 tires. I've got a Bontrager XR4 up front on an ICANN F945 rim, a 45i rim. And I've got the Duroc 40 rear rim that comes from RSD, whole rear wheel. It was a pain to get a 3.0 seated on here. It took a lot, took a big compressor, a lot of persuasion, but we got it on. I can't go any further forward or the wheel would rub the seat tube, and we're just at halfway on the dropouts. One other change I made is I put on a 40 mil stem and I put on some bigger Crank Brothers Stamp 1 pedals to see if I like the bigger ones better than the small ones. So today we're in Sedona. We're gonna go take it out on the trail, see how it behaves as a 29 plus compared to 27.5 plus. Bikes are so much fun. I'm liking these bigger stamp pedals, but because of the axle design, my shoes don't sink into the pins much. One of you mentioned needing longer pins. I could totally see that on these. It's definitely monster trucks over stuff and keeps its momentum better than the 27.5s. 29x3.0 is 30.5 inches tall, noticeably bigger than a regular 29er. Bike feels a little bit heavier than with 27.5. The bike feels a little bigger. It definitely handles more like a 29er. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It corners more like a 29er right now. That 40 mil stem feels a lot better for me. I wouldn't mind if the seat tube angle was 1 degree steeper, because I like the reach, I like the position of the bars when I'm standing. When I'm seated, feels just a little bit long on the effective top tube, just a little. I'm just on in between a small and a medium, and I went medium. And I'm glad I did for when I'm standing up and coasting. But seated, I think the small would feel a little more comfortable, tiny bit less stretched out. Man, I almost feel like this corner's better as a 29 plus, at least at speed. You have to lean the bike a lot more. You definitely need a better technique than when you're riding 27.5. I can tell the chain stays longer. It's harder to loft the front wheel over things. You can do it, but it's amazing what 15 mil longer chainstay will do. Still a very fun bike. I like it more than the V3 quite a bit. It's fun. It's just not the BMXy dirt jumper that the middle child is. At the moment, I'm liking this more than 27.5. Yeah, it does get up and over bumpy stuff better, that's for sure. Yeah, I don't know if it's the 175 cranks or the weight of the tire or the rate of the wheel. A little bit lethargic climbing right now. It's weird. I definitely feel higher off the ground. Yeah, I think a high engagement hub, a little bit shorter cranks would solve a lot of the lethargic feeling I'm feeling. Ironically, I think we lost a little something on the climbing switching to 29 plus, and I blame that on the longer chainstay. If I rode it in this configuration for 5 more rides, I'd be pretty used to it, and then I'd be nailing my climbs a little more. But the 27.5 wins for that shorter chainstay reason. Definitely feels more like a monster truck in 29 plus. Bottom bracket does feel a tad high, not bad, but not as planted as something like the Radical All Mountain Chili Dog that had a super low bottom bracket. This thing's planted though. I can push it a lot harder as a 29 plus than the 27.5. I can just charge stuff a little bit faster and not feel like I'm at the edge of the limit of what this bike can do. I live for climbs like these, but there we go. Just gotta remember I got a longer chainstay. It's not bad though, it doesn't feel super long like the Rocky Mountain Growler. It is noticeable though. A longer chainstay, man, I'm struggling on a bunch of little technical stuff. My timing's so off. So this thing's happy when it's up to speed and momentum's carrying it, but getting up to speed's a lot of work on this thing. I feel like the RS291 climbs better. I feel like it shreds harder, but you can't fit 29 plus on it. Can't put a rack on it. Can't put fat tires on it. And the beauty of this bike is its versatility. But it still holds its own as a trail bike. What a beautiful night. I'm going to adjust my tire pressure a little. I'm currently running 13 in the front. Lower it to about 11. If you don't run 29 plus low, there's no point in doing it. Just run regular 29ers. The whole point of these is running lower pressure. And if your rims are wide, it's not going to squirm. But if your rims are narrow and you're running a wide tire, it's the worst because you get a lot of rim strikes and it wants to squirm and roll the tires in corners. So if you find yourself doing that, run a wider rim. For 3.0s, I like a 45i to a 50i. For 2.8s, I like a 40 to 45. For 2.6, I like a 35i. And anything from 2.2 to 2.5, I like a 30i. That's the inner width. All right, got a little more cushion and grip from letting that air out. Probably let 2 psi out front and rear. Now, I'm a smooth rider. I don't just charge through stuff, and I'm always thinking about wheel placement and where the rocks are. So not everyone can get away with this low tire pressure. But if you're smooth, you can. You definitely need to dump the bike and lean it more in corners as a 29 plus. Whereas the 27.5, you can steer more at the bars like this. This one wants to keep the bar straight and lean. And that's pretty typical between 29ers and 27.5s. So I will say this one's a little harder to ride. It takes a little more skill. And if you're coming back onto bikes from some time off, it's going to take a little bit of getting used to. Hello. Can I sneak by you? Oh, thank you. It's just me. Have a good day. It corners better than I thought it would. Usually tall bottom brackets don't corner great. Oh, thank you. It's just me. Usually tall bottom brackets you feel on top of the bike more than in the bike. I'm feeling that a tad on this, but not a lot. Hello. Just popping over little things at last minute. It did a little better with the shorter stays on the 27.5. But man, the ability to just monster truck through stuff at speed is definitely better here on the 29 plus. The bike's noticeably faster in this configuration. Oh, it takes a lot of effort for me to get the back wheel up that little 10-inch lift we just did. It doesn't feel small and compact. It doesn't feel massive like most fat bikes, but like compared to my Maniac's far more playful despite being a 29er and a 29er that fits 29x3.0. The Maniac's so much easier to move around, but the Maniac can't run fat tires. So if you're never going to run 27.5 by 4.0, I think there are better options out there for you. Not that this is a bad bike, but there's just a lot of great hardtails out there. And if you want to pick my brain on the best hardtail for you and get my one-on-one consultation with you, become a patron today. Sign up. That's how I support this channel. So grateful for my patrons. Those of you that have used the service, thank you so much. Sure appreciate it. You make this channel possible. I do think this bike's gonna suit a lot of people. Would I run it 27.5 or 29 plus? I think 29 plus for how I like to ride. Maybe 29 by 2.6. Definitely rolls over stuff quite well. It's just hard to get it up to speed. It's slow accelerating. Head angle feels good though. Set up like this. I'm glad it's not any slacker. Rides better than I thought as a 29er. I think it rides better as a 29er than the middle child does, but not as good as the RS291. I can get it on the back wheel, but I really have to pull. And it'll still get airborne, but not as easily off like a little root, just a small 1-inch root you want to pop off of. Middle child wins there. But if you have big flow trails with built jumps on them, you'll be just fine on this thing. Handles itself really well. I think if the chainstay could fit a centimeter shorter with 29 plus, I know that's a massive ask. I know, because designing my Maniac was hard to make that happen. I think it would wake this up just a little bit as a 29 plus, but not everybody's as short as me, and not everybody wants a BMX-y dirt jumpery feel with that short rear end. A lot of people prefer stability, especially if you're staying on the ground and not just acting like a 4-year-old, popping off of every tiny little bump and undulation in the trail. This is a great bike though. I'm liking it. It corners really well if you have good cornering technique. Yeah, I actually prefer it as a 29 plus for corners. I do think if I had this on the double black diamond I had it on for 27.5, then I'd be feeling a little apprehensive on some of those big moves because I'm higher up off the ground, and it sounds dumb, but dismounting the bike, it's noticeably higher with these bigger tires. So that surprised me. I liked it as a 29 plus more than I thought. This bike, I'm pushing it to see where its limit is as a trail bike, riding fast, carving corners, taking it outside of its element just a little bit. But I know that people that are going to want to buy one of these are going to want to know, can it also be my trail bike and do everything? It held up very well as a trail bike. I think this would be wonderful as a long distance, multi-day bike, exploring bike, adventure bike, kind of the overland. We've all seen those lifted Tacomas with the max tracks on them in the rooftop tent. This is kind of like one of those that's good for like getting you way out there. It's going to be reliable. It's going to hold its weight really well, and it's just going to feel solid and have that capability with the big tires to kind of get you through anything. I think like crossing creeks or going through dry washes or sand, or just a lot of the stuff here in Arizona that you encounter on the Arizona Trail or other trails where you're just kind of exploring. I think this is one of my favorite bikes for that type of riding. But it also holds its own quite well on the trails. I can push it hard like a normal trail bike. It didn't feel sketchy anywhere. It felt very planted. It felt very confident. It didn't feel super playful, but let's be honest, I've never ridden a bike that can fit 27.5 by 4.0s that was playful. It's just really hard to do. And so you're losing a little bit of that playfulness for versatility. And I think most people, unless you're trying to manual and bunny hop and wheelie everywhere on every ride, I don't think it's going to be a problem at all for you. If that is you, get the middle child or the 291 or like a Santa Cruz Chameleon, something like that, because those are better suited for that, but you're not going to have the versatility of this. So once again, anything RSD you buy, Alex at RSD is hooking you guys up with a 5% off coupon code. Use the code PARTY at checkout and get 5% off. Super grateful for Alex for doing that. I'm a big fan of this. The 40 mil stem was good for me. Definitely an upgrade. These bigger pedals were better, but like I said, this taller middle part that covers the axle means if you look at it from the side, this pin does almost nothing because you're standing on this. So I'd rather have Chesters than these right now, but maybe with longer pins, it would wake these up a little bit. What else? I just felt like this bike was a little heavy. It didn't carry its weight quite as well as the 27.5 Plus for sprinted accelerations and just like single speed type riding where in your hard gear and you just want to crank on it and fly up something. It couldn't quite do that, but I think for motoring on and just trekking on like white rim trail, all loaded up with, 30 pounds of gear, I think this would be a wonderful mule. So compared to the 27.5, the 27.5, you can steer at the bars with kind of old school technique a little bit easier. You can still lean it, but you don't have to attack the trail. As a 29er, this bike wanted me to push it harder. On the 27.5 wanted to be pushed like 0.2 to 0.8 is kind of where that bike was happiest. With the 29 Plus, it wanted to be ridden at 0.4 to 0.1. I felt like we unlocked a new level of potential on this with the bigger tires. You could just rail stuff faster on the downhills, far more confident downhills. And that's not just chainstay length. There's something about the 29ers and how you would have to lean it to corner. You couldn't just stay on top and steer with the bars like we used to when we were kids. You had to really get after it and have good technique, but it would really support that. And I just felt like I could corner harder and faster with this setup. It did feel a little bit heavier. 29x3.0s, that's a lot of weight on there, and you do feel the extra weight. And those rims are bigger, and you feel the extra weight of the rims, and the spokes are longer. I mean, it all adds up. And so there's something to be said for that. But if I had to choose between the two, I'd pick this setup, the 29 Plus. Even though the chainstays are a little longer, lost a little bit of that playfulness, it just kind of came alive a little bit. And when I was riding it at 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, it woke the bike up and I could really charge on it. And that was really fun for me. All right, stay tuned for part 3 of this review. Make sure you're subscribed so that you're notified when it drops. And I'm going to take it out rigid on the 27.5 by 4.0 to see how it rides that way and to see where I can fit the chainstays with those big tires. Thanks for watching, everybody. There's a party in the mountains and you're invited.